As I was saying, I want to see if there are questions in reference to our discussions about light and darkness being created by the Lord, as well as good and evil, and how important they are to our understanding, not only what we see right now, but also what we are experiencing, as well as get a better understanding of the journey that we are on, a journey that we have actually been traveling since birth with no idea as to where it was going to bring us, no idea that we would be where we this juncture. So I'd be most appreciative if you would raise any questions that you may have, comments that you may have. Any questions or comments? Okay.
Um, Good morning. This is Audrey.
Good morning.
The discussion we had about obeying and sacrificing, that really helped me a lot because it just cleared up all the confusion about what we are obeying and what we're sacrificing and that kind of thing. So that helped a lot, knowing that you're basically obeying your inner voice. And when you don't, you sacrifice yourself or you sacrifice other people, especially if you're a leader or something like that. But anyway, that helped me a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Sounds like there are several people just getting in. Are there any other?
Good morning, Pastor. I have a question.
Mhm.
I want to go back to the example that Ron used yesterday, and I want a little more clarity on it. I think when he was talking about, we were talking about things being diametrically opposed, left, right, good, evil. He did the comparison of Caucasian and the African, and I wasn't clear on your understanding. What you said to him about what that means and what that looks like. So could we go back? Could you go back? Do you remember his question from yesterday? Could you go back and give a little more explanation on that, please?
Yes, ma'am. I do remember that. What I was saying is that we should look at it, or it's better to look at it the way it really is, and that is that concept. Phones, please. Make sure that they're muted. Thank you. If we look at that based on concepts, then we get a clearer and a better understanding of what that means. However, if we look at it based on the fourth structure of race, then it becomes contentious. And that's how has been looked at in the past. As a result, it has created enmity between the African and the European. Conceptually, they exist in the conceptual world of spirituality. They do not exist in this physical realm because of how it has been distorted and because of the lack of understanding of spiritual concepts. So, having said that, if we see the African as a concept, and the Caucasian as a concept, then what we see is that the African was enslaved and brutalized and indoctrinated with concepts that are not spiritual at all and was brutalized and indoctrinated to the extent that it caused the African to see itself as being inferior. And this was done by the European, who obviously felt that it was inferior because it felt the need to force someone else to feel inferior. So if we look at, based upon how the scriptures deal with those principles, then what we see is the African of ripeness and the European as unripeness. And the unripened concept of the European is what resulted in the lynchings and in the types of brutality that was directed at people of color by people who had no conscience at all, based upon what they were doing. And the rightness of it was exemplified and still is exemplified to this day by virtue of the African being instant forgivers and desiring to do whatever is necessary to bring balance. And one of the things that has created more of a gap, or more of a greater bone of contention between the concept of the African and European, is that rather than the African forgiving and pursuing its role of bringing rightness into the earth, it chose to do everything it could, make every effort to buy into the concept of the European. If I buy into this concept, then I will be accepted. If I straighten my hair, I'll be accepted. If I bleach my skin, I'll be accepted. If I make a certain amount of money, have the right amount of education, and live in the right neighborhood, I'll be accepted. Only to find out that that was not the case at all, because regardless of the desire to bring balance to being accepted, what was happening, it was throwing everything into a greater state of unbalance, of disharmony, because of the unripened concept that the African was buying into. One example of that, major example of that, is what happened in Greenwood, the Greenwood district in Oklahoma. The idea that it took place is known, but the question of why, very few people know what sparked that. What they look at is the arrest of a black male who was accused of saying something to a white woman in an elevator in one of the hotels. And when he was arrested, the black males from the Greenwood district surrounded the courthouse to protect him from being lynched, or the jail rather, to protect him from being lynched. And that's what supposedly sparked it all. However, the underlying cause of that was jealousy, because the African's idea of if I build my own community to look like the Caribbean community, if I am wealthy enough as they are, then they will accept me. Well, the jealousy came because the leadership in the Greenwood district found itself having to go to Europe, to France, to set up, to become trade partners, because the Caucasian or the Europeans in the U.S. Had begun to stop dealing with them, had refused to do business with them. And there was a deep state of jealousy. And the spark, the thing that brought it to the head was simply when they moved to protect that young man. think it was 19 years old, who had been arrested for something he didn't do. So I use that as an example because most of us, if not all of us, are very familiar with this Greenwood District destruction and how wealthy the community was. And I'm talking about a place that had, 42 grocery stores, 21 businesses, restaurants, 70-some restaurants, 49 grocery stores, 72 restaurants. That's what it was, something like that. So this is an example of believing that all I have to do is be a capitalist, and I will be accepted as an equal. That didn't happen. Why? Because in doing that, the African had abandoned the concept of his essence. And the essence of the African's concept is to bring balance by virtue of bringing ripeness to an unripened consciousness. And that unripened consciousness has become the dominant consciousness in the earth. So when we talk about ripening the earth consciousness, or when we talk about bringing balance to earth consciousness, what we are actually talking about is bringing ripeness to the European consciousness. And the European consciousness is not just a consciousness of people who are of European descent. It has spilled over into the consciousness of the earth of all groups of people. And all the other groups of people are people of color who are dominated by that consciousness. And as a result, it has become the dominant consciousness in the earth, and that is the reason the Japanese, the Chinese, they have an aversion for people of African descent, all because of that European consciousness. So here we are. We are in the throes of change. And the thing that we have to make sure that we keep our focus on is that we are not changing to be like anyone. The change is to be who we are, and that is the source of balance, the source of forgiveness, the source of rightness, the source of righteousness. I hope that that helps you, Catherine, and the rest of your course.
Yes, that made it very, very clear. And I also wanted to ask from yesterday when we talked about obedience is better than sacrifice, and we looked at sacrifice. I agree with Audrey that did open it up, and it made it much clearer, and it also made me look at motive and intent. Even if your motive and intent is based on a false premise, if you're believing something that's not even true, the sacrifice still happens. With the example that you gave of the minister who said, the pastor who said, basically, I know that I haven't been right, but I can't go back and tell my people I've been wrong all these years. They still were reaping the sacrifice from not being able to see who they were because they were believing what he was showing them, and he didn't do anything to change that. So when I look at motive and intent, that also made me think about, and when you look at what happened when the plagues were sent and Pharaoh kept hardening his heart, not letting the people go, I see this thing as there comes a time when there's a statute of limitations for your opportunity to be loving kindness in the earth. When you keep hardening your heart and refusing to be who you were purposed to be in this earth, at some point that statute of limitation runs out. And what I mean by that, they had every opportunity, but then they drowned in the Red Sea. So when I look at the virus, when I look at what Omicron is doing by giving people 1,000 more antibodies than what you have if I'm in this country and I just decide I'm not going to take a vaccine and I get Omicron, I'm dying, but somewhere else I'm producing antibodies. I see all of this as a spiritual thing, but I wanted to see if I'm seeing it the right way, what role motive and intent, obedience and sacrifice and that statute of limitations, how that all comes together, because I think the thing that we miss sometimes is that God's will is going to be done. You have the opportunity to get on board, but when you continue to not be your brother's keeper, when you continue to say, I got my rights, it's all about me, at some point this is going to end, and we don't shape what the end looks like, but we feel, because you made reference yesterday that this Omicron is maybe moving us to the end, and I wanted to ask, am I saying that the right way?
Yes. First of all, when we look at the Omicron and through the eyes that you have seen it and to the way you're explaining it, what we see is that 1,000% increase in antibodies speaks volumes, because number one, the one is Aleph. One is God, is Elohim. And when you add 3 zeros to a number, it's set in concrete, because it is divine wholeness. So that's the reason I see the Omicron the way I do. That divine wholeness speaks to the idea, I have given you the blood to put on the doorpost, and that is the injection that you have received. And I've shown you that those 3 were not enough. You need to be boosted. You've done that. You've done all that you are or have been required to do. You have taken 3 injections. That the number is, again, 3, divine wholeness. And because of those 3 injections, this Omicron virus is going to increase your protection by 1,000%. And as you said, those who chose not to do it are going to reap a different end. And I do believe that as chaotic as it has felt in the last week or so, with the plans that we had as men in the earth have gone awry, I do believe that this is showing us that since we felt deeply inside of us, it was to the advantage of humanity for us to be vaccinated and to do everything we could to make sure that everyone else were. This is a signal that this is indeed coming to an end. And what I mean by the end is that it will not be the agent of division and the agent of death unless you have chosen to die that way, or you've chosen to ignore the signs of the time. You've chosen to flaunt flaunt death, or to buy into an attitude that defies science, and to be expressive of deep ignorance of life in this nation, in this world, being in a state of deep ignorance about the nature of our essence as we were created. That being, there is very little difference. There is no difference between science and spirituality. Science is simply visible spirituality. And to see that the outcome of being vaccinated gives life and gives protection for the continuance of life, and it prevents depth of suffering that none of us have ever heard of or experienced in our lifetime. And to defy all of these things speaks very loudly of the ignorance of our relationship with our Creator. For example, to say that they're putting a microchip in your arm when you walk around with a cell phone? First of all, what makes you think that you are so important the government want to track you? What makes you think that what you know in terms of information, the government want to track you or what you're doing is so important? If that is the case, then why are they not tracking you through your smart TV, your telephone, and your new car? All of those gadgets are tracking devices, period. The other thing is, why would you believe that is going to make you a zombie and you've not seen a zombie in existence as a result of being vaccinated? All of these things are idiotic. And if some of you are thinking that way, I'm unapologetic about what I'm saying because it's real. Why would we embrace such idiotic ideas as that? As I said yesterday, I had someone tell me they had gone back to church and people had gotten sick and some couple had died, and they said to me that, in essence, that I did the right thing and resisted all of the calls to go back, not from you guys, but from other people to go back. And my response was that my people trust me, and I don't talk to them about anything that I don't feel deeply. And one of them was, we should not go back until the numbers are right. And here we are. And I'm most appreciative of that. So anyway, without me rambling, let me say that I hope that helps clear some things up, Kathy.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
This is Barbara. Good morning, everyone. My concern and my ache is the hundreds of thousands of people whose religious leaders have said to them, you don't trust God if you take the vaccination. Trust God, and God will bring you through. Hundreds of thousands of people.
I agree with you, Barbara. It's extremely painful for people to be led to the slaughter by their own shepherd. I agree with you that even if all of them don't die, the ones who died left broken hearts behind, left teary eyes behind, as simply because someone in shepherd's clothes who is actually a goat has led them to slaughter. That is deeply painful. Yet, I do believe that with all the understandings, the opportunity to look deeper into what was being said has always been there. Now, this is the kicker. People who have been under leadership for years have a tendency to trust their leadership, but there's a group in there who don't trust it. They just go along to get along and put their lives on the line in that manner, without the understanding that God is not a test case. You don't have to test your faith in God by virtue of putting your life on the line. If you truly believe that the only way that you're going to know that you have faith in God is that you have to take chances that with the odds being against you. So why is it that you don't drive a car without brakes? If this is the case with the virus, then God can stop your car at every stop sign, every light. Why is it that you take vaccinations before you go to school? Why is it that you do any of these things in dessert? You eat the food from the market and you don't know what's in it. So this idea of putting people's lives on the line simply because you're trying to prove that you're a faithful leader is simply spiritual murder. You are killing people. And I do not understand why is it that people who are very much aware of this will still allow that type of dangerous, deathly, uncaring leadership to lead, to be their guide in this earth, to help them actually navigate the minefield of emotional devastation, simply because they say this is my church, or I was born and raised and nobody's going to move me away from my church. This is not about your church. This is about the Creator's concepts of who we are and how we become humans. It's not about being a member of Great New Faith or St. Paul or Foundation. It's not about any of that. It's about recognizing yourself when you see it in the mirror. And when you look at the mirror of the teachings, you are confused. And what I mean by that is this. One day you're told that you can do everything that Jesus did, and the next day you're told you can't because Jesus is 100% God and 100% man, and you're not. Then you're told that if you're baptized, you're a Christian and you're going to heaven no matter what you do. How do I know that? Because I've seen some totally ungodly, unfaithful people be funeralized, and according to the ones who are doing it and speaking concerning them, they put them in a quote-unquote heaven. And there are people who have not been baptized, is not affiliated with the church, and they do righteous things every day. And if they die, they won't even allow them to have their funeral there unless they pay for it. And in paying for it, they still castigate them for not having known the Lord, or for not having been baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Those things are asinine and dangerous. And these are the reasons that Barbara so clearly states her emotions about what's happening with hundreds of thousands of people. All of it is resulting from the teachings that I have just mentioned. So I do 100% totally agree with everything that means what Barbara has said, even though the parts of it that she's probably not even thought of yet, that actually speaks to it. Any other questions or comments?
Pastor.
Yeah, good morning, Pastor. Go ahead, Ron. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, George. Go ahead.
No, good morning. I was just going to say, I bared witness, to the fact of just seeing, dear friends, of mine, who have faced, situations in their church, where the pastor was encouraging to come back, to service. And because of that, the first lady of the pastor had transitioned, the choir director transitioned, and, one of the elder mothers had transitioned, and it was a catastrophe atrocity in terms of just how this person felt. And she came to the point, where we talk about obedience is better than sacrifice, where she made a decision that she had to tell the pastor that she, I guess her inner voice said that she could not come back, until, there was that feeling she felt to know that things were better. So I think that, some of us have faced that situation where we know of loved ones, and I think it's the same, when you talk about, loved ones who we know that are making decisions on behalf of even their children, where sometimes things come up where the children are going to school, things are happening where they're now being faced with the fact that someone in their classroom, may be tested positive with COVID. So I think that there's a lot of, again, concerns of how we deal with that. So I think that this is important that we be in a position where we can share the importance of, spiritual truths in terms of how we feel. But I know people have to still make their own decisions. So I know it's something that, in the macro that, we want to have discernment about. And I just wanted to share those thoughts in terms of just being able to be there for others in time of need, just to share our spiritual insights. That's what I wanted to share. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ron.
George, I think we're on the same page. I listened to what Barbara said, what Pastor said earlier. I remember us talking a while back about love covering a multitude of sins, and we've also talked about the things we say on here. We see evidence of them later on, and so what I'm saying is the sacrifice of what some may put out there and out of ignorance and not knowing and putting people in jeopardy. I think the importance of being on this line, and as we say, putting things in the macro and refreshing the universe, cleansing the universe is what we're doing. So this is in a sense for those innocent lambs that may be suffering. That's the necessity of what we do. And so, we keep in mind that is our focus, and that's why it's so important that we remain focused, because love does cover a multitude of sins. So we look at this, and we, Pastor, kind of not define it the right word, but kind of talked about this new virus and looking at it from a spiritual perspective. And I'm listening to Barbara and others talk about their concern with others out there in the land, and even some of the racist stuff that we talk about. We are covering sin, and this is all in what we studied those several months ago. We talked about the importance of going back to the beginning. You don't have to physically be anywhere to make a difference in the land. We're doing it now through our voice, through the breath that we speak.
Thank you, guys. When you're speaking about when George referenced the people who had transitioned as a result of false teachings and manipulation, I thought about how many are those who are in leadership in terms of pastoral leadership who have stood there and watched their people suffer and die because of decisions that they made, and have deemed it to be their fault because of lack of faith. Didn't have enough faith to trust God. This in itself, these teachings are irredeemable. And these teachings come from the false teachings that we have received in regards to what the scriptures are saying. And it goes all the way back to the concept of the European and the African, because the scriptural teachings, the doctrines, the understandings from the commentaries are based upon European interpretations rather than Eastern truths. The way that we understand the scriptures are not based upon the way the scriptures are written. And a classic example of that is when we look at the word evil in the Hebrew. It does not mean something that is catastrophically destructive in terms of evilness, or the way we see it, have been taught in church. Yeah, but it means something that's gone astray, or something that can be brought back to order, or something that is in disarray. It does not speak to an evil person or an evil thing. It is speaking to the concepts that are contrary to the concept of righteousness. So it is everything that we've talked about is based upon this type of evilness, and that evilness of which I speak is that which we have been indoctrinated with about the scriptures. None of that is true. Excuse me. I was cleaning up the kitchen last night after everyone had left, and everyone left when about here, even Greg and me. But anyway, after people had gone to bed, I was cleaning up the kitchen, and the TV was on, and I heard this guy preaching, and his tone was one that was easy to believe in terms of what he was saying, because he was very eloquent in his teaching. In his speaking, rather. And I was thinking about how eloquence has been translated as truth, or eloquence has been received or embraced being the truth simply because it's eloquent. People don't listen at the words. They listen at the tone. And this happened to be a preacher of European descent. But his eloquence is what caused people to believe that he's telling the truth. And when I compared that in my mind to the deliverance of the African preacher, that in itself is a type of cultural eloquence that causes us to embrace as well. As opposed to listening at the words, is listening to how I say it. How many times have we listened at people talk about someone preaching, say, man, he sure know how to say it. And I've had that same pastor who told me that he could not tell his people had been wrong all this time. We were sitting in the pulpit at a particular program when I was still there in traditional ministry, and I never shall forget. This guy sat down and said, how did I do? I said, well, you ain't say nothing. And he leaned over to me rather, and said that he didn't say nothing, but he said nothing so good. And that, I was befuddled by that. But it didn't take long to make the connection. You don't have to say anything. Just sound good and excite people. That's where the error is. And this is where we get the idea that we must be obedient to the leadership and disregard what we feel deep inside of us. So we're sacrificing the deep truth that we know are there on behalf of the obedience to a message that truly is of spiritual death. And that is something that we are indeed not just contending with now, we are exposing. And the exposure of it is seen by the response of the lady of whom George was speaking in that particular congregation where those multiple deaths took place. Questions or comments?
I have a question. I'm not sure how to ask this. We've been talking for the longest about dichotomy and something opposing the other, and we even got into it yesterday and today, good and evil, a little bit. if you look at that concept in the place of sermons, that dichotomy has not existed. So the average person don't have a reference to what truth sounds like. And help me with that if I'm wrong. So if I'm sitting in a church and I've never heard someone explain something in a...
I didn't understand what you said.
Oh, okay. I was looking at it from the perspective of those that are sitting in the pews that are sitting out there listening to sermons across the land and have been for hundreds of years, right? If they've never heard truth, they've always heard it from one certain perspective, whether it be from the left or the right, how, you know what I mean? That dichotomy does not exist. There's nothing to oppose. There's nothing to bounce it off. There's nothing to help you define whether or not this is real. I guess I don't know. Does that part make sense? I could go on about that, but so I guess what I'm saying is just maybe that until now has never been a something that I can look in the other direction and see and help me put truth around this or decide whether or not this is something that I see and agree with. Because religion has been dominant for so long, there's been nothing else to compare it to.
So, Ron,
and that's you looking at any religion, any of the isms. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
So, Ron, what I hear you saying is that if what we started with is that there has to be the dichotomy for you to know one or the other, and your point is if we've not had truth from the pulpit or from the religious sector, the only thing that we know is that one thing that they've shared with us. So we don't have anything, we don't have the comparison or the dichotomy of what truth really is in order to determine what is untruth. That's what I hear you saying.
Yes, that's it.
Ron, I want to jump in. I hear what you're saying, but I also go back to obey and sacrifice. I don't know, somewhere in the scriptures it tells us it's written on our hearts. So if we're willing to take the time to reflect and think and listen to the inner voice, we know what resonates with us and what doesn't. I mean, because of tradition or whatever, we can ignore it, but we definitely know what resonates inside of us. No matter, even if we've been in a situation for, 10, 20, 30 years, we still know. So to a certain degree, I hear where you're coming from, but on the other hand, it's still a situation of obeying and sacrificing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Audrey, if I may, in terms of just speaking in reference to what you're stating, some of you, know that I grew up in the United Methodist Church, and I was raised, and taught, by, a Caucasian pastor whom I dearly, truly appreciate and love for what he shared to me growing up, as a youngster. And I know that, again, as I begin to grow, in my spiritual walk, he mentioned to me that there's some things that I cannot teach you, when it comes to your desire to want to continue to seek truth. And when I say truth, I mean from a religious standpoint, I understood some aspects of, tradition, but I know that it was something else that I truly still was desiring in terms of just going back to beginnings. And I think that this is where the transformation for me took place, where I know that Pastor Richard said that if you want to seek the truth or know the truth, then my thing is we have to be open. And I think that was the beginning for me in terms of where I'm at today, that I had to make a decision to be obedient in my spirit, versus sacrificing myself to stay somewhere where I knew that I wasn't, seeking and growing in the way that I desired. So I'm only just saying that in a way that hopefully is just giving an example in terms of just the desire that I know I have and that we all have in terms of seeking the truth. And as I begin to, study or begin to meditate and begin to stay in our dialogue, truly having a better understanding of the beginning from the Cushite and Kemetic teachings, I'm truly coming to a point of peace that I appreciate today. So I just wanted to share those thoughts as we were talking. Thank you. I'm done.
This is Craig. Good morning, everyone. Something I want to add to what Ron was saying is that, I mean, Ron, and I'm sure you don't mind me sharing, but you said the thing that brought you to Greater New Faith was that you were seeking something. There was something stirring within you, and all of us have that. And it's because we, at some point, we lost sight, or we lost a connection with part of who we are. That voice that we hear that tell us, and my dad always mentioned, that voice you hear to tell you to slow down. That voice is you, Elohim, because something's coming up that you want to avoid. A lot of times it is a state trooper. But it happens to us continuously throughout our life. And at some point, as we're growing, something pulls us away from who we are. It is no different than taking an eagle and telling him he's a chicken and treating him like a chicken his whole life. And there's something in him that wants to fly. There's something in him that wants to soar higher, but his whole life he's been told he's a chicken and he can't fly. He can only go so high, and that, he's supposed to cluck. And what we're doing now is that we see ourselves and we know we're different. And we know that there's something calling us and pulling us away from this path that we've taken. And what we've done is that we have stepped off of the path that, we stepped off of the path where we can see the next step. And that's what going by faith is. You don't necessarily have to see the next step. You just continuously walk. And we're reconnecting, not only reconnecting to our source, we're reconnecting, or we're finally realizing and acting in who we are. Before we could live in the gifts and experience the gifts and be a blessing to other people, we have to first realize and know that we are a blessing. We have to know that we are the light. And we have been convinced, because we get caught up looking at what's going on around us and from false teachings, and we allow ourselves to be distracted, that we lost a sense of who we are. We lost a sense of purpose. And what we're doing is shedding light, and we're putting a mirror, an unhazed mirror, in front of ourselves, in front of each other, so that we can see, this is who I am. And seeing who we are, we begin to act according to who we are. You don't act as Elohim if you don't understand and realize and accept and believe that you're Elohim. And when that's what we're starting to do. Yesterday, my dad and I went to Colombia. And we talked about those things, and he kept saying that, I kept saying that, something told me, or I heard, and it wasn't anything telling me. It was me telling me. It was me being Elohim, and being, not only being a part of the source, but being the source that was telling me that these are things I needed to do. This is what was about to happen. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I do, and I agree with you. I agree with you.
And I think what it's going to take is, like, it's easy for us to get upset with people, these anti-vaxxers, and these people who, for some reason, COVID isn't real to them. Whether it's a pastor or a family member, and it's easy for us to get upset and angry with them. But my approach is to ask questions, to let them see for themselves. Well, didn't you take other vaccines? Well, you're taking this medicine that's intended for a horse. Do you know exactly what's in it? Because you say you won't take the vaccine because you don't know what's in it. Do you know what's in a horse pill that you're taking? Those types of things. And the thing is, when you want to tell me that I don't have faith I got to have faith in God. That's why you don't take the vaccine. That's why you want to live your life like that's happening. But do you not think God created the scientists? I mean, gravity existed. Man just had to figure out what it was. And by asking those questions, and then at the end of the day, you've done your job. Everybody has free will, just like you want them to accept your stance without being angry. We have to have compassion, but we accept their stance and keep moving, because you can't throw pearls of wisdom at the feet of swine. I'm done.
Craig, I yes, sir.
No, go ahead, Ron. I'll wait for you to finish.
What I was going to, and first of all, thank you. I agree with what everyone has said. I agree with that. I was also talking about, though, the lesson that we had on leprosy. There is a point where not everyone feels that vibration. And when you look at that, it was saying, at least one of the things I got out of it is that one of that 10% that makes that turn carries the people, and the masses won't always come. So what I was speaking of was not only just in today, but in looking at ancestors and all of mankind. Maybe they haven't felt that vibration. Maybe they haven't seen that dichotomy, and things happen in a season the way they're supposed to, and spiritual things are not marked by time, but maybe this is the season where that dichotomy comes about. And so I agree with what everybody says. We all have the same opportunity, but I guess I've never seen it in scripture where the masses reach that point at the same time. And that's what I'm saying. I was trying to say is maybe such a time as this that people are starting to turn and to go back to their beginning and see what's truly being said. Because before, maybe they just had nothing to compare it with. That's what I was saying.
Thank you, sir. Thank all of you.
But isn't this, sorry, this is Audrey, but isn't adversity the thing that makes us turn and look? I believe with all my heart that everyone will eventually turn and look. It doesn't have to happen en masse, but and even if it doesn't happen in this lifetime, there will be another lifetime for them to have the opportunity to turn and look and receive. I really believe that with all my heart.
And I do too, Audrey. But what I'm saying is, what if we are the answer to the turn and look? The cry has been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. The Hebrews were crying for 400 years in Egypt. So
yeah, we are for some people, but you're
yeah,
right. You're right,
yeah.
Ron. Everybody's not going to turn and look.
That's all I'm saying. I couldn't agree with you guys more. I think we're all saying the same thing. I'm just I just can't put it out like I'm trying to say it, but I think we're saying the same thing. Everyone does have that opportunity, and everybody does cry. They just don't know how to turn.
And I know why.
Okay.
Why?
The reason they haven't is because they have been given a false dichotomy. And the false dichotomy that they have been given is that the devil is evil and Jesus is righteous. And dark is bad and light is good. False dichotomies. Even though there are those who have felt the stirring inside that told them, you're not a chicken, you're an eagle. Because deep desire to be accepted, the deep belief that you must have your funeral in a church, the deep desire to have people within the confines of Christianity or religion to accept you, to embrace you. We have closed our eyes in the past to this stirring that we've experienced. The pastor had a stirring that he experienced, but he chose to close his eyes to it and hold on to the false dichotomy that the devil made you do this, or the devil is the reason that you do what you do, or the reason you are unrighteous. False dichotomies are very dangerous, and that's what we have been given. And we have avoided or not even realized that those who have perpetuated these false dichotomies have been turned over, for the most part, to a reprobate mind. When we talk about the irredeemable concepts of our doctrines, we're talking about those doctrines that are embraced and perpetuated by leadership, knowing that these doctrines are not changing anything. Their reprobate mind tells them to hold on to what they have been teaching because that keeps them popular. And not only does it keep them in a place of popularity, but it also causes others to cling to them and to put them on a pedestal. And because they're on that pedestal, it draws other people who are blind to truth to them. And they see them as the source of truth because they are standing on a stage that we call a pulpit behind a desk. And they're standing there behind this desk on this stage in flowing robes with speech that appears to be eloquent, even though their vocabulary is limited to 2 words probably. They have a sound. They have a deliverance that mesmerizes. And in doing doing so, it makes it easy to embrace that false dichotomy and to look at someone who is speaking differently about what's being said as being wrong, as a matter of experience, and exposing at an early time that false dichotomy. What happened is we experienced people being drawn to the truth, and when and I can speak for myself only, when I was a teacher there in the association at Pickett Mountain, in the beginning there were a few people who came to hear the teachings, but the word spread. And I never will forget, and some of you on the phone remember the night that when we were told, teachers, to get up and take your classes to the rooms, over 200 people got up to go to my class, and there was nobody left for the others, and they forced the people to split up. And after that, the teachings that I was permitted to do would begin to be minimal. Why? Because the false dichotomy had to be maintained in order for the popularity of that individual to be maintained, so that person could maintain the power over the people who were seeking the light. And pretty soon, because of the way things were, the teachings of the light was pushed out in order to maintain a lie. So that's the reason it has been so difficult for people to embrace the truth. And honestly, it is not their fault, for lack of a better word. I don't like that word fault anyway. It is on the shoulders of the teachers, the leadership, those who stand in the position of pastoral powers are the ones who are responsible for these false dichotomies. These are reprobates. These are men and women who have reprobate minds. And right now, that the insanity of these reprobate minds are being made clearer than ever before. When you look at even the speech in the eyes of Kenneth Copeland, and when you look at the local ones whose words makes no sense and whose doctrines are putting people in danger, and they're beginning to see that. One of the pros of COVID has been that people were beginning to see that their lives were being put in jeopardy, and they did as the lady did of whom George spoke. She made a decision. I can't do this anymore. I watched all these people die, and you're talking about having faith, and they still dying. This has nothing to do with faith. It's what she actually said in her actions more than words. So that's where we are at this moment. And this moment in time is here because there are those who dared to stand up against these false narratives and speak the truth in spite of being rejected, in spite of being pushed into a corner, in spite of being relegated to growth in a cave where the dampness of religion resided, and the cold-hearted thoughts and actions of the people perpetuating that religion was always directed toward them. They chose to walk away, sometimes in tears and sometimes with joy, but all the time with a burden, the burden being that of all the things that they had been taught, and the burden of having to actually go contrary to the family beliefs based upon what we knew the truth to be. So, and that's where I see that, where we are, and that's what I see as the reason why it was so difficult for people to embrace the dichotomy of which we are speaking today, because they have been given a false dichotomy. Thank you. Questions, comments? Does that make sense to you, Mr. Ron?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It does, and that further speaks to what I'm saying, the importance of what we're doing right now, because I truly believe that these words, the breath that carries the words that we speak, crosses the boundaries of death even, and it helps those that have come before us and those that will come after us. And, you know, I no longer even try to wrap my mind on what all that means, that you dare think you speak to the universe. I don't even worry about that. I know what we do is real. And if I look at it from a physical human perspective, you talk yourself down and you put doubt in your head and you start back looking at stuff that happens that kind of bring you to a place of depression or even thinking you're less than. But I know better now. I know better. And there are still weak moments, of course, but I fully embrace what we do and the importance of it. So the things that we see and the struggles that we see, we are supposed to see them. We're the ones that can look at it from a different perspective, as we say all the time, to see it with the eye and not the eyes. So I embrace that, and I agree with what everybody has said. It just we're at a different place now, I guess. Is all I was trying to say anyway.
This is Barbara. I started with the comment earlier that it ached, it hurt to see so many people being misled by religious leaders. But that's not, that doesn't mean that I do not understand that there are no boundaries, as you said, Ron. There are no boundaries between life and death in terms of energy, because that's what we are. And that though all of these people have been transformed to another form of energy and not the solid, opaque, physical beings that we think we are, or that many think we are, I understand also that that this is a different kind of beginning for all those folk. The hurt and the ache has to do with the people, as Pastor said, the people that were left behind, the families that are being touched, the people that don't understand, the people that are not able to see that even in death, that's not an end, but a beginning. And everyone is not there. And as Audrey said, you know, everyone hasn't stopped and turned and listened and accepted yet who they genuinely are. As Craig says, the ego that we are, we're still the chickens. And so that hurt and that ache has to do with knowing that there are so many people who are still at that level of understanding, who are still dealing with the false dichotomies that they don't even know are false dichotomies, that kind of thing.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Did Audrey describe the burning bush experience?
Yes.
Okay.
She said we're stopping.
Explain it to me, Evelyn.
Explain what? What you said?
Yeah, how that goes together.
Well, when you talked about stop and look and recognize,
Oh, I see.
I can't. Yeah, what you can you say what you said, and then everyone else will know that what I just said. So can you do that for me?
I think I think I said, yeah, when something resonates with people, they will. I think that's Ron's term to stop and look, turn and look. Anyway, but yeah, something has to catch you. Something has to move you or resonate with you for you to stop, to turn and look and see what's going on. So
When we talk,
And isn't
when we
that what
talk-
Moses did?
yeah, I agree.
Exactly. Other people could look at that same bush that Moses looked at and not ask the deeper question and not take the time to stop and wonder why that bush is on fire and why is he, and spend the time to look at it and see, well, it's on fire, but it's not being, it's not burning up. That it's continuously on fire. So a lot of us have those experiences, but we don't take the time to look underneath and see what is really going on here. We simply pass on by. It doesn't get our attention long enough for it to create the question within us of what it is and what it is our eye is seeing.
Yeah, or we're rushing to church or rushing to work or rushing to wherever.
Or watching and seeing the court case. No one stops. You know, when you truly stop and say, okay, why is it that people of color are being murdered by police? Nobody stops to ask that question in a broad sense. Individually, legalistically, yes. But with COVID in George Floyd, everyone stopped around the world and at the same time asked the same question. Why is this bush fire and not being consumed? Why is it that these things are happening over and over again and the end is always the same? The officer is vindicated every single time. And then all of a sudden when people start raising that question and coming to the conclusion, this is not right. This is something different. This is a message in here. This bush is not being consumed. And now what happens? Because of those questions being raised, we are beginning to see answers. And what are the answers? The policemen are convicted for the murder of Floyd. Manslaughter conviction for the woman who shot the young man in the car and said she thought it was a taser. The murder of the vigilantes in Georgia, the conviction of them. All of these are the result of stopping the burning bush catching our attention to the extent that it raises a deeper question than the question that we hear on our lips, because we've heard that, why is it that we're always being killed? Yet it did not resonate deep enough to those who had the power and opportunities to change it. It did not resonate until now, and it would not have resonated had it not been for COVID. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
COVID was a worldwide burning bush that caught the world's attention, not just a people or a nation or a city or a town.
Absolutely. And therein lies the difference.
Good morning, Pastor.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Evelyn, if Evelyn is still listening, and you talked about the importance, in terms of just sometimes the music that we listen to, and I just wanted to say, to not only Evelyn, but everybody, the song that the Stylistics wrote, stop and look and listen to your heart, and what your heart is saying is love, And I think that again, this is something that again I just wanted to just share with everyone, because again I think that's the bottom line of love for humanity. And so again, I just wanted to share those thoughts, and that song resonated in my spirit. I just wanted to share that thoughts. Thank you, y'all. LOL.
Okay.
I'm here, George. I'm still here. Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? George, would you mute your phone, please? I think that was your phone. You're traveling.
No, I'm muted. I'm muted.
Okay. Okay. I thought you were traveling. I was here in the air.
Okay. What I was about to say is, we see that, as we've talked in the past, everything has a dichotomy. It is what helps us to see what we see and define what we define, and it brings understanding to the things that we seek. However, I think the examples that we used here when Pastor was explaining about the false dichotomy and looking at the truth of it shows us that dichotomies do exist in a way, but they cannot be, those things are all one and the same. You hear me a lot talk about that number line and that number line having opposite things on the end. That dichotomy, at least from the spiritual perspective of the things we've looked at, can no longer be separated than an inhale or an exhaled breath. One brings about the necessity of the other. So when you look at these things from a spiritual perspective, and when you say, as we kept talking until we look at this as we do all the time and see the truth of the matter, then that is the dichotomy. That is the moving to a place where no matter what it takes, you see that the essence of what a thing truly is, and bring the truth about it. So the things that we see as the hurts and the pains and all those things are what make us search and meditate and push and close yourself off to that dark place so that you can see answers, that you can have words of encouragement, because those hurts and pains are part of what you're seeing, and they also are the catalyst to bring about solutions. So dichotomy is not two things, it's really just one. And that's, I hope that makes sense anyway.
It does. It's like when you look at a quarter, one side of it is different than the other side, yet it's only one quarter. That's how I receive what you were saying, Ron.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. I want to share.
Yeah, Pastor, real quick. I've been hearing the word dichotomy. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Do you care to spell that? And is that the same thing as like false doctrine?
I was in a spelling bee. I won. I'm not in one, not yet. So, but try.
I was too, but I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly and then the correct spelling.
Dicotomy. I think that's what it is. I know
Okay.
Ron knows. Now, what were you asking, dear? In addition to that,
Is when you say a false dichotomy, hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, is that the same thing as false doctrine?
false doctrine is part of a false dichotomy. Example.
Okay, yeah.
The doctrine of the doctrine that teaches us that there is a devil who is responsible for everything that's wrong and that everything that is dark is evil. That's a false dichotomy within a false doctrine. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
So there are several different things within that doctrine that are wrong, if that makes any sense.
It does. Thank you. And I think someone was going to say something the same time I was speaking.
Okay.
Well, that was me. This is Faye. It's been a while since I've joined you for church, but this was very interesting conversation and applicable to a lot more than the virus. Definitely lends itself to relationships. So I just thank you for the word today.
You're welcome. And who did you say you were?
This is Faye.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anyone else? Okay. I want to share something with you. Part of what you spoke yesterday, which I shared yesterday, rather. Have you, in the past few, let's say 7 to 10 days, experienced a sense of chaos and experienced being calm, yet at the same time feeling the chaos in the atmosphere? Have you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yet,
Yeah.
everything you make an effort to do to make things as they were in the past during this period of time, they did not work out and they felt deeply chaotic. There's a reason for that. And what I have been shown is that the universe is rebalancing itself. In other words, for the first time, Earth consciousness is finding its footing. Not the footing that it has experienced from the beginning of interaction with different people from different places in the earth geographically, but a footing that it was supposed to stand upon from the beginning of our being created. In order for us to be the entities that we were created to be, and believe you me, we were not created to be Adam. We were created to be Elohim. And Adam is the spiritual entity that was to occupy these physical bodies for the express purpose of becoming human, and in doing so would also be Elohim, having a physical experience. That's what human means. At this juncture of time and spirituality, we are, the chaos that we are feeling and yet feeling the calmness in the midst of it, that chaos is a change from what we were to who we are to be. Example, why is it that there is so much emphasis put on the winter solstice Why is so much emphasis put on that? Why is it that there is such a religious experience surrounding the winter solstice like none other? Why is it during this period that we are experiencing what we are experiencing now and never have prior to now? It's because as the universe recalibrates, we are being recalibrated as well. You would think that the universe has never been out of calibration. However, if we believe what we have been taught, or what we have been teaching rather, that the universe, we are the universe and the universe are us of room, then if we are in need of recalibration, then so is the universe. Because if we are it and it is us, one cannot be in calibration without the other being there also. So the balancing that is taking place now is being seen and experienced as chaos. When we cross that bridge into the coming years I spoke yesterday about, we are going to experience, yes, greater chaos, but in the midst of it all, we are also going to experience a greater sense of peace and balance and calmness than we have ever experienced before. And the chaos that we are going to be experiencing at that very same time is not chaos coming from us. It is chaos coming to us. And the chaos that's being brought to us is being sent by the one who created us. It's being sent by the one who created us for the purpose of calibration. The way we approach it will determine whether or not we have lived up to the task of recalibrating ourselves, thus recalibrating the universe. The way we approach it, our words that we speak in reference to it, the things that flows through our minds about it will determine whether or not we are living up to the task of recalibrating Earth consciousness so that it will be truly one with the universe itself and the nature of truth and everything that it stands for. We are on the precipice of crossing a bridge into a change in this earth that has never been experienced prior to now, because there has never been people in the earth who are willing to deal with the true problems, to deal with the lie that's being perpetuated, to face without fear the false narrative of religion, without being afraid of what may come as a result, trusting totally that this journey is being guided by the one who created us, knowing that to look at people and blame them as individuals because of their skin tone for what happened or because of their national origin is wrong. But understanding that all of these things are indicative of what it takes spiritually for Adam to become the human, which again, human being, Elohim, having a human experience, a physical experience. So when this happens, what is the purpose of it? The purpose of it is this, so that the prevailing energy in this earth is no different than the prevailing energy in the universe. That does not mean that there are not going to be periods of hatred and chaos. What it does mean is that we will be able to contain it we will be able to process it in such a way that we will bring humanity to the place of reconciliation with who it was created to be. And in doing so, we will become the true platform. We will become the true foundation for others to build on as we move forward. We will begin to see a settling of the climate. The weather will be more stable. We will begin to see the stabilization of men's thoughts and how they respond and react to each other. Even though there will be those whose words are hurtful, whose words are hateful, we must understand that these are not the words of the people. These are the energies that is fighting to be transformed. The energy that fights us for what we are doing is not fighting us to stay what it is as much as it is fighting for redemption. And if we can do what Jesus did, then what we are doing is redeeming the time. Not so much the times that we live in, but the time period. From the time that the spiritual entered the physical, we are redeeming that time. And the redemption of that time is when our men are able to live without the conflict that we are currently experiencing. When men will be able to see these conflicts and not make an effort to resolve them based upon might makes right. Rather, they will be resolved based upon righteousness and unrighteousness. And this is a continuous process so that the result would be as above, so is below. Meaning that just like the spiritual nature of truth rules what is above, so shall it be below. Any questions or comments about that?
When you say processing, we'll be processing these things. I also saw this the same thing as transforming.
Yes.
Transforming that chaos, because transform is to change something, to alter it, to convert, to modify it, to change its appearance or its character. And so all of this is what resonated with me as you said that what happens is that what we will be doing is bringing everything into the resonance of the universe. And we may only represent, at this point, the people, the Elohim that we are may only represent 5 instruments that are in tune with the universe. But as we continue to strum that, and as we continue to send out that same resonance into the macro, then it begins to line everything else up with that resonance of the universe. So it changes the energy level, in a sense, from that of chaos to that of balance.
Absolutely. And you're right, that word, transformation, is a better word than process, because that's exactly what it is. When my 7-year-old grandson can say, I wanted a green crystal, because it is a reminder to me to be one with nature. And I ask, what does that mean? And when he says to me, it means that I am reminded of the 4 elements. And when he named it, I can never remember them in order. And then to say to me that because that's what makes me one with nature, those 4 elements. 7 years old. That tells me, that speaks volumes to me. that there is not change. It isn't change coming. It's here already to tell me that he knows that flock of bluebirds he saw the day before yesterday meant something, but he doesn't know what it means yet. That tells me that out of the mouths of babes, the scripture speaks of the wisdom that comes from the mouths of babes. Is not only the 7-year-old babe, but is also the 70-year-old babe, out of whose mouth wisdom flows. The 7-year-old babe is the physical babe who speaks the wisdom. The 70-year-old babe is the babe who has begun to recognize it is spiritual in nature, and to make every effort to understand it and live accordingly. Questions or comments?
Hey, this is Lamel.
Yes, ma'am.
The other day I was watching a special, and it talked about a new coral reef being discovered off of Australia, and that it had an unusual new breed of fish. So this is evidence, this would be evidence as Earth beginning to heal itself, coming into balance, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I'm familiar with the article that you used. This doesn't speak of the earth healing itself as much as it speaks of us healing the earth. Because the earth is for the redemption of the Adam, redeeming the Adam to become human. Does that help you for me? Does that make sense?
If you'd explain it a little more in terms of, you're saying we're healing the earth, right?
Yes. The reason I say
Because
that we're healing the earth is because the earth was not told to master us or to the earth was not told to dominate us. We were told to dominate the earth.
Right. Okay. All right. So as we become more aware of who we are as Elohim, we'll see more healing in all sorts of areas.
Yes. Anyone else? No more questions or comments? Then please permit me to thank you for your time and your presence. And we indeed look forward to speaking with you on tomorrow evening. And please note that any questions you have, write them down or bring them tomorrow, and then we will see where the guidance of a room will carry us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You too.
you. Bye, family.
Bye, everybody.